Around 4 or 5 months ago now, I made a video talking about alternatives to Games Workshop games. The intention at the time was never really to engage with the conversation about boycotting, but more to use it as a timely opportunity to shine a spotlight on some lesser known games companies. We covered the likes of Battletech, Frostgrave, Stargrave, Infinity and Conquest, all great games in their own right, but with a few months of sand through the hourglass now, I wanted to check in and see how they're all holding up. But I'm not one to not put my money where my mouth is, so indeed I've given all of these games a bit more of a look, and indeed I've actually bought into most of them. And so really that's what today is about, kind of a hobby update video, but also at the same time to check in on those games and see how they have served as replacements for Warhammer since I stopped playing that game. So first on this list, I want to talk about Battletech, and that's because this is the game that probably got its claws deepest into me, but then also really disappointed me. The game of hex-based rock'em sock'em robots is indeed a fantastically deep and very old school feeling game, with lots of chart consultation and research often being part and parcel of play. It really appeals to folks who like to get into the nitty gritty. It also has a ton of lore to offer, meaning that players can really immerse themselves in its interesting world of projected future conflict through amazing video games, books and the like. The sad part though is, still to this day, official plastic miniatures are really quite hard to get your hands on, as well as the box sets that make the game far easier to discover. Sure, eBay scalpers have them from the recent Kickstarter, but after almost 5 months I'd really have hoped Catalyst themselves would have addressed the supply shortages in the face of such burgeoning demand. If you want to 3D print your mechs, use PDFs and are willing to hunt around or use secondhand or even feed eBay scalpers, the game is definitely going to be worth your time investment. But sadly for me, on my kind of lifestyle based time constraints, that was just too many hoops to jump through. And that's a real shame. That said, you can bet your pimpled cushion cuddler that I will be back for a better look at Battletech if point of entry and supply do become a little easier to access. These two are a pair of fun, cute little semi-RPG-like skirmish games. I've got the rulebooks for both, and I've played both on TTS. Not really played either physically. Both games share an author and have very similar systems. I'd be confident in saying that if you know one, you'll very quickly feel familiar with the other. The point in essence is that these games, which I'll hereon refer to as the Graves for brevity's sake, offer players a pick up and go casual experience that is miniatures agnostic. That means the Graves actively encourage you to use whatever minis you like, despite both having their own model ranges from North Star military figures. All in all, both systems are great for narrative play, but both are prone to being rather swingy, making it a bit difficult to take them seriously as a replacement if you're competitive minded at least. Unless you're willing to do a lot of house ruling. Both really fantastic games, they just scratch a very specific itch, and so maybe can't replace your main wargame, but are definitely worth a look for a bit of casual fun. So this is probably the one on the list that might disappoint a few of you, because it's the one that, of everything here, I've not really touched. It's a rank and flank fantasy game with a pretty cool, chunky little, slightly different scale. 38mm I think, instead of the usual 28 or 32 that we're used to. It's got a lot of the usual stuff that you'll be used to if you've been around war games for a minute, but it's a pretty decent and well fleshed out setting. Full transparency and complete honesty, I can't really say if there's anything I like or dislike about the game system, because despite owning the box, in fact, you can see it right there in shot, I've never actually played a physical game of it. When I first got it, I did so because it was super cheap and it contained a lot of miniatures, and those are pretty normal reasons for a wargamer to impulse buy something, particularly a wargamer who is prone to impulse buying. But that impulse buy kind of bit me fairly early on. As soon as I started to do any research into the game and look into it properly, it became clear that unless you were buying specifically what's on sale or special offer, the pricing model's just a bit weird. All of that said, of course, I fully hold my hands up that my look at this was absolutely superficial, and I definitely could dive deeper and give it some more time if at some point I feel inclined to do so. I'm absolutely sure I'll have missed at least some of the things that make Conquest special, and whilst that pricing model is a bit weird, I was even having a second look into it last night, the night before filming this. It's possibly justifiable if the game is great, if you love the game. And I'd love to hear from you in the comments, if you're a Conquest player, about what it is you think makes the game so special, because I'm wondering if there's something that I'm missing that maybe makes it worth ploughing through those prices. So yeah, if this one's your favourite, do me a favour, don't at me. If you watch this channel regularly, you probably already know how this one worked out. And I could, if I wanted to, use this section in the video to sing the praises of what has become my favourite game and my main hobby focus. But I'm not going to do that. You see, I already have several videos that talk about why Infinity is great, why I love it so much, and I've really been gushing quite heavily over it since getting into it about 4 months ago. Instead, I think this is a good opportunity to talk about why Infinity maybe stands out from its competitors and from this list. Infinity is a cyberpunk anime-inspired low model count game, and I make a very specific point of calling it low model count rather than a skirmish game. Because where Infinity really stands out is that it has the biggest advantage of a skirmish game in that it requires fewer models, which means less time painting and more time playing. But that alone isn't the entire definition of what a skirmish game is. When we talk about skirmish games, we often assume a gateway for deeper, bigger games, like in the case of Warcry or Kill Team, leading into Age of Sigmar and Warhammer 40k. We assume RPG-like elements that might be present in things like Necromunda or indeed the Graves. And as such, we assume a mostly narrative focus or a more casual target audience. Infinity's not really about any of this, making it kind of nothing like a skirmish game. It's deep, it's tightly balanced, it's extremely competitive, and at the same time it also has the Code 1 rule set, which is definitely less intense in experience from a learning perspective, but still offers huge strategic and tactical scope, extremely tight rules, and great competitive fairness. So just shy of 5 months down the line, that's where I'm at with specifically the games that we reviewed. 3 of them I'm actively playing, albeit with the Graves on a very casual and occasional level. One of them I definitely still intend to play and have spent a lot of time consuming the lore for. That's Battletech. And one of them, well, didn't really seem like it was for me, but doesn't mean it's not still worth a future look. But the fun doesn't stop there, because that list was nowhere near exhaustive, and in fact, with all the time in the world, I probably couldn't compile a list that is exhaustive. We also have Kings of War, the fantasy rank and flanker with super cheap cost to play. I talked about that in my value shootout video. Star Wars Legion, another one from that video, with a very low point of entry and an already impressive model range. And Silver Bayonet, another upcoming game from the creator of the Graves, set in the Napoleonic Wars but with a gothic horror twist. The simple truth of the matter is that there is still a vast swathe of undiscovered country to roam if you want to look for alternative suppliers to Games Workshop. And don't get me wrong, you don't have to be mad at Games Workshop to want to do this. Broadening your horizons as a wargamer is really healthy and can actually help you discover boxes that you didn't even know you wanted to tick. So in conclusion, at least from my perspective, exploring beyond GW's borders was a hugely rewarding experience, and it was really worth it. I got a new main game out of it, which means I don't miss 40k at all. On top of that, I also discovered a bunch of other games that I'm interested in playing, and I got an opportunity to try those out, which was a really fun experience. Now that I've settled back into my new hobby, I know what my direction is, and I'm in the happiest hobby place I've ever been. I'm getting more reward from tiny toy soldiers now than I ever got before. So it could just be that looking further afield also yields great results for you, and it might just be worth a goosey gander to see what's out there and how you feel about it. Thanks for watching the video, folks. Don't forget to like, subscribe, check the Patreon and all that usual stuff. It really helps the channel so much, and it helps me pursue the dream of doing this full time. That'd be fun. I'll see you in the next one, everyone. Bye for now.